isn't just a curiosity. It's a game changer in the fight against diseases back on Earth, paving the way for breakthroughs that benefit us all and enabling new economic opportunities in space.
Welcome, Axiom 3 on board the International Space Station.
From our vantage point more than 200 miles above Earth, we are not just spectators. We're gaining unprecedented insights into the world we call home, and we're sharing our findings openly. We're not just achieving results today. We're sparking inspiration in future generations of explorers and embracing the power of global collaboration as we reach for the stars.
What was your favorite experiment on the International Space Station?
Toby, great question. My favorite experiment was the one that I got to eat. It was us growing hatch chili peppers in our plant habitat.
Station Huntsville on 2, we have video in Node 1. Looks at those chili peppers.
And as we soar through space at 17,500 miles per hour, each moment is a step closer to unlocking the mysteries of our Earth, our universe, and propelling our pioneering spirit even farther into space. So come along for the ride aboard the International Space Station.
Seeing that video brings a lot back of a lot of fond memories of my mission. We didn't grow peppers, but we actually grew Mizuna lettuce during my mission, and that was something that I very much enjoyed because you had something green and growing that you were taking care of. You were giving it water every day and monitoring the growth. And then the best part was at the end of the experiment, we processed the lettuce, and some of it of course had to go back down for science, but then we were able to enjoy a fresh salad. So that was a big moment for me. And we have so much incredible science going on the International Space Station during all increments, and there are some specific experiments I can highlight today for what this crew specifically will be doing. There are kind of two areas. We're actually gotten into the time now where we even do some science on board the Dragon before the crew docks to the International Space Station. Some of those experiments that they'll be doing in Dragon, they have an experiment called Space Health, which is a Canadian Space Agency experiment. It's a biomonitoring wearable technology garment, and it's looking primarily at things like the cardiovascular system in terms of understanding more about how that system responds to microgravity to make sure that we can monitor these aspects of astronauts and keep them safe on orbit. There's an experiment called Thigh Cuff that they'll be doing in Dragon as well, and this is really a small kind of restraint that they put around their thighs, and this can help prevent and counteract some of the fluid shift that we experience in microgravity. So in microgravity, we have this upward fluid shift of our blood volume where it really leaves our legs, because here on Earth, gravity is pulling, of course, all that blood down to your feet. So in space, you have this upward fluid shift where the blood goes upward into the torso area and in the face. Sometimes you can see that in some of the astronauts, especially as they start adjusting to the microgravity environment. And some of these fluid shifts may be actually contributing to some of the problems that astronauts are experiencing in space. There's one example, the spaceflight associated neuroocular syndrome, and this has some different hallmark features, but basically it is causing some vision deficits in some astronauts when they come back, and actually changes to the anatomy of the eye, the back of the eye, the retina, and the choroid layer, which has the blood supply for the retina. Some astronauts have an optic disc edema, so a swelling of the optic disc, and also even a flattening of the eyeball. So a flattening of the back of the eyeball actually changes the refraction and changes your vision. This was something that I actually experienced during my mission. I had a pretty severe case of SANS. Luckily, everything is kind of back to normal now, but the one lasting symptom that I have is that I have perfect vision now. When I launched to space, I actually did wear glasses and contacts, and because of that globe flattening, I now have 2015 vision that has persisted for the last 5 years. So, most expensive corrective surgery I think possible. Thank you, taxpayers.
When you mentioned that on Wednesday, it really kind of surprised me that it fixed it. But then I thought about it, and for most people who know, for people who also wear glasses or contacts, you can have an astigmatism, which is an irregular shaped eyeball. And I was wondering since then if that's what ends up happening. Does it then take that irregular shaped eyeball, which is more like a football, kind of make it more into a basketball when you go to speed, in terms of your case and getting
not
better?
necessarily. In terms of my case, it's not like it's causing an astigmatism, and I didn't have
Right, no, but I'm saying reversing it.
Yeah, well, I didn't have an astigmatism to begin with.
I
That's
see.
different than just being nearsighted or
Okay,
farsighted.
okay.
So I'm not sure actually if we have any data of people that experience stance that have an astigmatism. That's an interesting question on how it would affect that overall shape. This is kind of just a flattening of the back of the eyeball that's normally round, so it changes that refraction, which of course changes your prescription and changes your vision there. This crew on board Dragon will also participate in an experiment called immunity assay, and this is a new way to monitor health and immune function with a blood sample. So most of the time, historically in space, we take blood samples and we have to send them back down on Earth to be studied by scientists to evaluate them for all these different parameters, for example, immune system parameters. This is actually an in-flight assay that would allow the data to be collected in flight without going back down to the ground. So it could be really important in terms of physiology and medical research and also direct health of the astronauts as well.
Yeah, because when the blood comes back down to Earth, instantly gravity is then a factor, so studying it in that microgravity environment while it's up there.
Yeah,
right?
the blood sample itself, the parameters that they're looking at, they won't be changing anymore because they're
Okay.
not. It's not in the human body anymore. But you're right. Now we are keeping the experiment a little bit more clean since we're never exposing anything back to that 1G environment. When the crew is on the space station, a few of the experiments they'll be participating in, one is the CIPHER study, which is a really large, comprehensive physiological study that has been kicked off in recent years here at NASA, and it's really a multidisciplinary study looking at both physiology and psychological components, and it's comparing different duration missions as well, and will be really important for that comprehensive physiology. For example, applications to SANS like we talked about. There's an experiment called Drain Brain 2.0 that's really looking at blood flow between the heart and the brain in space and how that changes with microgravity. It involves a special neck collar that the astronauts will wear. And there are some particular flammability experiments, combustion experiments, one called Sophie Mist that the astronauts will be participating in. This is something that we do quite frequently, combustion experiments in space, because if you think about it, of course, even flames burn differently when we don't have this natural air motion and convection caused by gravity. This particular experiment is looking at different models for flammability that can be used on future space missions and has terrestrial applications for combustion models as well. So lots of different types of science, really engaging and really important, not just for the future of astronauts and future space exploration, but direct applications to disease states and other factors back down here on Earth.
The burning stuff in space sounds like fun.
It is fun. Don't worry, it's very well contained.
Oh, you're just not taking a match.
We have, yeah, definitely. We have a special facility where it's a very contained environment in a glove box where we do these types of experiments, so we can make sure that we keep the astronauts in the space station safe.
Oh, that's important. We are at T-minus 1 hour and 59 minutes and counting from liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket and Endurance Dragon spacecraft from Launchpad 39A here at the Kennedy Space Center. CREW-10, as you can see here, currently inside Dragon. So far, CREW-10 has completed their comm checks to make sure they can communicate with the teams here on the ground. Their seats have rotated from their upright to their reclined launch position, which allows them to see and access their display panels. They have also completed their suit leak checks to make sure that their spacesuits are working properly. We also heard verification that we have a good side hatch leak check, so that's good. If you've been watching us since we came on the air at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, you know that we've had fantastic commentary from NASA astronaut Jessica Meir. My name's Daryl Nail. The pleasure and the honor to sit next to her and help document this journey to the launch pad with all of you. Let's go over the crew so you have a sense of a little bit about the folks who are inside the capsule today. We'll start with our crew commander, Ann McClain, this NASA astronaut. is a West Point graduate and U.S. Army colonel who has spent 204 days in space and completed 2 spacewalks. She's a highly decorated Master Army aviator with over 2,000 flight hours.
Post-press briefing.
SpaceX Dragon, go ahead.
Good news. At this time, we are tracking no issues with Dragon or Falcon proceeding with launch today at this time. So I have no updates for you, but we'll continue to keep you up to date if anything happens. Otherwise, the closeout team is performing their final steps in the White Room before they depart the pad. I'll copy.
SpaceX Dragon, copy, no issues. Great work to the team.
That's a great update. Working no major issues. The launch vehicle, the spacecraft, ground systems, all good. So we watch the closeout crew continue to do their work before leaving the launch complex. And just to wrap up on Ann, she's a former rugby player and a pretty good one from what I hear. She got the nickname Animal.
Yeah, she is pretty tough. We talked earlier about her need for speed, and I think that leads into the story we told on Wednesday that I have to retell about how she has a particular inclination to operate vehicles in complex situations. And this one goes back to high school where she apparently ordered a pizza so large it could not be transported in the car. So she and her friend got in the car, they put the pizza on top of the car, and Anne, as the driver, natural commander seat of course, had her left arm up on top of the car to hold the edge of the pizza box and her right hand on the steering wheel, and her friend had her right hand up on the other side from the passenger seat. So Anne is really ready for anything, I would say, in terms of transportation and complicated vehicle setups.
And where in the world is it that you can order a pizza that's as big as the roof of a car?
Spokane, Washington, apparently.
Apparently so. Wow.
Colossal something, I guess they were called.
Okay. Well, it's a good thing it didn't come off the roof because it sounds like it would cover an entire windshield. So good job, Ann. Okay, let's talk about our CREW-10 pilot now, NASA astronaut Nicole Ayers. She's a U.S. Air Force major and graduate of the Air Force Academy. Nicole has flown the T-38 and the F-22 Raptor, logging over 1,400 flight hours, including 200 in combat. This will be her first space flight, making history as the first astronaut from NASA's 2021 class to fly. And she has said that that is very special to her. She feels humbled by it, and she's flying stuff up into space for her fellow classmates in honor of her being able to go first.
You know where she got her call sign, Vapor?
I do not.
It's an interesting story as well. You know, she's an F-22 pilot, and apparently it was one of her early flights, and I think she had a formation flight with her colonel or something as her on-wing, so big deal flight. She got ready to start the aircraft, and suddenly as she was doing so, there was some kind of smoke building in the cockpit. So her training kicked in, and she was abort, quick, ready to leap into action and abort that engine start. And turns out it was just condensation. So that's how she became known as Vapor.
The vapor that condensated onto her glass inside the cockpit. Well, it's as good a nickname as any. I thought you were going to say that she pulls really hard G's and creates a vapor trail, and that's what I thought you were going.
Well, that too.
Oh, that works as well.
She is a jet pilot.
Yes, she is indeed. Let's move on to our mission specialist now, Takuya Onishi. He's our JAXA astronaut on board. He's returning to space for his second mission. A former commercial pilot, he spent 113 days aboard the space station in 2016 and then became the first Japanese astronaut to capture the Cygnus spacecraft. When he's not training as an astronaut, he enjoys flying, hiking, movies, and playing the saxophone.
Also serving as a flight director. He, after his second flight, got certified as a flight director and was actually acting as a flight director on the ground in the Mission Control Center in Japan for even up during his training flow until his last trip to Japan. So really exceptional experience for him because it really gives you that kind of perspective that's so vital as an astronaut to understand the ground really intimately. A lot of us as astronauts work as Capcoms in the Mission Control Center, talking to the astronauts from the Mission Control Center, and that affords that as well. But being a flight director is even more impressive. So Well done for Talk for keeping that up. He even has an asteroid named after him.
You mentioned that before, and I'm still very curious at how that came
We'll
about.
have to dig that one up.
Yeah. But you mentioned his qualifications, which flows into his upcoming assignment as ISS station commander. Those are some great qualifications. The fact that he has seen it from both sides, both in space and on the ground. The second mission specialist is Roscosmos cosmonaut Kirill Peskov, a former airline co-pilot. This will be his first trip to the International Space Station. Trained in skydiving, zero gravity, scuba diving, and wilderness survival, he's ready for the challenges of space. Not a man of very many words, but when he does speak, he's very succinct, very clear.
In Siberia. But another great fact that I came across from his
Kirill,
colleagues
we
was
talked about the
that
fact
in
that,
this region
he
in Siberia, had never seen a bear until he went to California, even though he grew up in Siberia. But another great fact that I came across from his colleagues was that in this region in Siberia, it's very close to the Mongolian border, which is an incredible part of the world. Where I actually had the opportunity to go to do some research to study bar-headed geese in Mongolia, and it is a very special area. But one of the things that's special about that area is that they do a lot of throat singing. It's this old traditional form of singing that's really deep and guttural from the back of the throat. I won't even try to do it because I can't, but if you've never heard it, you should definitely Google it and see. But apparently Kirill does throat sing.
He can do it?
He can. So I wonder if he's doing any of that for them in the capsule.
I've heard this, just so happened to have heard it, and I was fascinated by the sound that they make with their throat in this singing. And it's really pretty cool. At first I was like, oh, whoa. But there was a very popular commercial on TV in which they had some of that throat singing. And that's where I first heard it, so I had to go look it up.
It is very cool.
That
very
is pretty cool. Yeah. We are T-minus 1 hour and 49 minutes until the liftoff of NASA's SpaceX Crew-10 mission. We have 3 astronauts and 1 cosmonaut inside of Dragon Endurance atop the Falcon 9 rocket. They're at Launch Pad 39A. They are headed to the International Space Station to help maintain the orbiting lab. Once on board the International Space Station, Crew-10 will become members very briefly of Expedition 72 for a few days. And there you see the members they'll be joining, Crew-9. And then they will become part of Expedition 73, conduct research to understand material flammability, contributing to the future spacecraft design, and study how spaceflight affects human physiology and psychology. That's their patch.
Yeah, this is an interesting one, Daryl. The Expedition 73 patch was designed to honor the science and scientists that make space exploration possible. And if you look at some of the elements on the patch here, the number 73 is a prime number and a binary palindrome. There's a good one for Pi Day for all the NASA geeks watching today. And that's represented at the base of the patch. 73 is also a star number, represented by the hexagonal shape of the patch, accented by white stars, and symbolize the crew's dedication to space exploration. The grid lines illustrate our earthly perspective from the cosmos, and finally the ISS, the International Space Station, symbolizing humanity's continued collaboration across space and time.
Those grid lines to me look like something out of an 80s video game.
Yeah, or the Matrix. I believe Johnny Kim was the mastermind behind this mission. I believe we talked about it on Wednesday, but the way that we start a new expedition on board the International Space Station, it actually rotates not with the Dragonfly, but with the Soyuz flights. So Expedition 73 will begin on April 8th with the launch of that Soyuz mission. Sergei Ryzhikov, Alexei Zubritsky, and NASA astronaut Johnny Kim for his first flight. Or the Matrix. I believe Johnny Kim was the
While we have a moment, let's take another social question. Laura, let's see. Landon Davidson asks, how long does it take to readjust to gravity on Earth once you return?
Well, Landon, like all things physiology related, there is a bit of individual variation, so different humans experience it a little bit differently. For me, it was interesting when I went to space, I actually adjusted very quickly. Even though, as humans, we've never evolved without gravity, I felt really comfortable and like I was at home. Some astronauts do experience space motion sickness, though, for those first few days, where they may feel a little bit queasy, even a little bit nauseous, maybe even vomiting a little bit. That's normal and usually resolves in the first few days. And most of these effects are really due to your neurovestibular system. So your inner ear, we have these semicircular canals, and some other organs that are actually gravity dependent in terms of how they work for your neurovestibular system, which is of course responsible for spatial awareness and balance and those types of things. So that system goes a little bit haywire when you first experience microgravity, and then once again after you've adapted to that and you come back down to Earth. So when you come back down to Earth, you don't feel great. You literally feel gravity, kind of like the bully on the playground that has their hand on your head and is pushing you down. You feel the weight of gravity when you're sitting down, like you just feel heavy. You go to get up from sitting on the couch. I remember having some lower back pain that actually persisted for many months. I just felt really stiff, like I was suddenly 80 or 90 years old and I couldn't, quite straighten out my back. But overall, astronauts generally adjust pretty quickly. In those first few minutes and even hours, you're a little bit like a drunken sailor when that neurovestibular system is really kind of readjusting. Some people have a little bit of motion sickness in those first few days. I didn't really have that. I was pretty fortunate. And then, you readapt to things like walking kind of quickly because your body just, gets used to it. You've been doing it for so many years before flight. It takes a little bit longer to adapt to running because it's this more complex motor neuron connection for running than it is walking. And I remember that very well. I was in the gym with my trainer, and she's like, okay, go ahead, run across the gym. And it felt so strange as I took kind of that upstroke of one foot. It felt normal, but then when I landed my foot, I felt like I was an elephant crashing down to the ground.
Wow.
And we run in space on the treadmill every day, every other day, and so you're used to running, but you're not really used to running at your full body weight because in weightlessness we have a harness that we use to hold us down on the treadmill, but we usually only run at about 75% of our body weight. And of course it's so different when you're not under the full effect of gravity. So running takes a lot longer to kind of get normal again. So depending on what exactly you're talking about, the first days, even weeks, you feel pretty tired. But then you adapt fairly quickly after that, and maybe some lingering effects for some people, back pain and that kind of thing, but really a lot of individual variation there.
And you touched on it. It's not like you're not working out on station. Your exercise is part of your daily regimen, and you're staying as fit as you possibly can. So it's really interesting that when you come back down, that neurovestibular system, that's the thing that's not used to it and is throwing everything off.
Yeah, because your cardiovascular system, you are running and bicycling every day pretty much up there to maintain your cardiovascular system. But of course, the rest of the time, your cardiovascular system is not acting against the force of gravity like it is here on the ground all the time. So there's some level of deconditioning that just happens where, on the space station, I'm up there, I loved running on the treadmill. You kind of feel like a gazelle since you're a little bit offloaded.
Fast.
And yeah, even your gait changes, your stride changes a little bit because of the mechanics of running are just different up there when you're not under your full body weight and you're kind of, you're being held down by this harness. But I really, really enjoyed it. But you're running for miles, every day. So Sonny Williams did and a few other people have actually done marathons.
Dragon SpaceX closeout team has departed the crew arm.
SpaceX Dragon copy.
So what happens is when you come back down to Earth, you just like, even though you've been running miles a day, you come back to Earth and you can't even run a mile because you've had this kind of cardiovascular deconditioning. So that takes a little bit longer to come back.
Interesting, from a marathon to struggling with a mile just because of the change in coming back from space to Earth. Well, we are now T-minus 1 hour and 42 minutes and counting. Let's take you now inside Mission Control in Houston, where flight controllers are constantly monitoring the International Space Station and the people living on board. NASA's Gary Jordan is there. Good afternoon, Gary.
Good afternoon, Daryl and Jessica. Thank you. This is Mission Control Houston, and we're in the International Space Station's flight control room here at NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. The team continues to prepare for launch, led by Flight Director T.J. Creamer. Today we'll be, of course, launching the 10th rotational crew mission to the International Space Station under the agency's Commercial Crew Program. Following CREW-10's arrival, the space station will have a total of 11 crew members aboard for just a few days. 4 of those 11 crew members include the CREW-9 cadre, with NASA astronauts Nick Hague, Butch Wilmore, and Sonny Williams, alongside Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexander Gorbanov. During the next few days, CREW-10 will go over handover procedures with the off-going CREW-9, including a safety briefing and orientation. Then the new crew will jump right in to help advance scientific knowledge and demonstrate new technologies. After a few days of handover activities, the members of CREW-9 will prepare for their undocking and return to Earth. Direct handovers between crews allow for continuity of the activities and helps to ensure a continuous U.S. presence on the space station, which is now at 24 years and counting. Ahead of CREW-9's return, NASA astronaut Sonny Williams turned over command of the space station to Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexei Ovchinin. In just a few weeks, NASA astronaut Johnny Kim and Roscosmos cosmonauts Sergei Ryzhikov and Alexei Zubritsky will join the on-orbit crew. Shortly after the departure of the Soyuz MS-26, with NASA astronaut Don Pettit coming home, will mark the commencement of Expedition 73, led by the new commander, JAXA astronaut Takuya Onishi. All of this, of course, coming up after today's launch. We continue with the countdown, and with under 2 hours before launch, we'll send it back to Kennedy. Daryl?
If you're just joining us, this is live coverage of NASA and SpaceX's CREW-10 mission to the International Space Station. We're now T-minus 1 hour and 40 minutes until liftoff, and so far we've had a smooth countdown. No issues with the rocket or spacecraft. Ground systems are looking good for launch. You're looking now at the crew inside their capsule, CREW-10. And one of the first tasks CREW-10 did as a team was design and create their mission patch. There it is on your screen. And here's their description. The SpaceX CREW-10 patch was thoughtfully designed by the 4-person crew. They used AI for the initial inspiration, and then a human artist perfected the design. So as you can see, as you're looking at there, it's a 10-sided patch with the Roman numeral X boldly in the center, representing the ascent and descent that they will do. It's also representing the 10th operational flight of the Dragon spacecraft. Notice the Dragon with its wings fully out in full flight. That's a nod to the 4 crew members who are all professional pilots. The stars are red, white, and blue for the flag colors of each crew member's home country, and the brightest stars represent the crew's closest family members and support system. It's a lovely patch. And it was interesting, Nicole Ayers was asked about it. She said she kicked off the design of the patch when she and her husband initially used the AI image generator to come up with some ideas, but it was really just to kind of kick off some ideas, and she took those then to the human artist, who then was able to artfully design that CREW-10 patch. I really like that X in the middle and how it's got them ascending into space and then returning to space. It's a good one, and you can see it there represented on the flagpole just below the American flag. Flies the CREW-10 patch on the CCP flag. CCP standing for Commercial Crew Program.
Yeah, it's one of the great things that we do together as a crew. Another one of those traditions like we talked about. You know, I don't know that everybody knows that we really do design those patches by ourselves. So we try to capture the elements that are important to us, special things from our professional and or personal lives, special things about the mission and timing, and just things that mean a lot to all of us as crew members. Oftentimes, we are capturing the international spirit of cooperation and collaboration that's reflected by the makeup of our crew. We talked already about that 50th anniversary of the Apollo-Soyuz mission as well. All of these things really play into our patch design and thinking about what components to put there.
Will you have some artistic influence in your patch if you do a patch one day?
Oh, absolutely. So yeah, I did help design the patches for my previous mission and for future missions as well.
CREW-10 is also allowed to have some personal items, as you well know. Jessica Bier, astronaut with NASA, joined us here on the broadcast. They get to take them with them for their extended stay in space. And for this crew, here's a few things that they will be taking up. Anne McClay, her and her crew were able to pack some personal gear to meet them on the ISS. It's going up on SpaceX 32 in April. She packed some sports team shirts, and those are from the schools she attended, along with some holiday gifts for the crew. Commander McClain said, most importantly, she was able to pack a memento for multiple people who worked on this flight to support her either personally or the mission as a whole. Those items will be returned to their owners after flight, and they include things like pins, necklaces, and rings. It's neat to have some jewelry that's flown in space. Takuya Onishi is having a lot of pictures of his family, friends, and colleagues sent up. He's also flying some banners from elementary schools he participated in when he was a small kid.
Yeah, it's always fun to bring a few of those personal affects from home. One of the things as astronauts that's so important to us is being able to share this mission. This is not just for us as individuals or even just for us as a crew. This is really a mission for everybody. Everybody at NASA and all of our partner agencies, all of the people of our countries, really all of the citizens of the world. So we try to bring up things to represent that, whether they're from universities that we attended, different organizations we belong to, things that really represent all of the different people who helped us get where we were and where we currently are on the International Space Station, and to really bring it back to them, to tie it to them as well, to share the mission and remind everyone that this is truly for them and for all of humanity.
I just add a note about Nicole. She said she's taking items from alma maters and the Air Force volleyball team that you mentioned. Some of them are here today.
Yeah, they are.
She's also taken a bunch of pictures of her friends and family so she can keep them close. And since she's the first person from her astronaut class to go to space, she's also taking up something for her classmates, the Flies, of course, Group 23. But she didn't want to say what it was, because she wants it to be a surprise. But she said that she's getting nothing but love and support from her classmates.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that they are all so proud of her today. So excited for her. I never forget that first moment when you see your first classmate launch. It really does feel different. You get to know all of the other astronauts and cosmonauts that are flying, and every launch, of course, is very special when it's one of your friends or colleagues. But it's a little bit different when you see your own classmate, because it just makes it more real for you. Your classmates are like your friends and family, and they started at the same time as you, and it just gives this extra dose of reality of, wow, I didn't just become an astronaut. We actually are going to have the chance to go to space now. So, very exciting day, I know, for all of the Flies.
And a relaxing one for Kirill Peskov, who's on the left side of your screen, who looks to be taking advantage of some relaxing time before liftoff.
Absolutely. Maybe he's getting ready for some throat singing. Maybe this is part of the process.
He just heard me. He woke up. Yeah. Let me clear my throat. Well, as CREW-10 launches, that means that CREW-9 will return home soon. CREW-9 launched from Pad 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station back on September 28, 2024. And that was a unique flight because it was only 2 crew members in order to make room for Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams, who, of course, flew up on a Boeing Starliner test flight but are now coming down in those 2 open seats with Crew-9. That capsule is on station right now. Wilmore and Williams have been living and working on the space station now for over 9 months, the other 2 for a little over 5 months. Once Crew-10 arrives, there will be what's called a direct handover for 4 days, which is going to be shorter than usual, and then of course Crew-9 will undock and come back home. And so that's going to be a quick handover period that they're going to have, a little different than the longer week or so that they have.
Yeah, it depends on what's going on, with comings and goings of different spacecraft. So those handover periods can be variable. Also because, we never know exactly when the Dragon's going to leave because we have to have good weather prediction for landing. So you never know exactly how long they'll be, but we do have to plan for something. This one is called a 2+2 handover. So we'll have 2 days of dedicated handover activities where the crew members that are up there, the experienced crew members, will be handing over all the important information, how they do things. Of course, this new crew is well trained on all the systems and everything up there, but there is just something to understanding exactly the lay of the land when you see it in person. Little nuances that you can really only get from the crew members that are up there, you can't necessarily get from the ground teams. So we take that time to really hand over all of that really important information. That would be, especially for the new astronauts that have never been on board, but even for Anne and Tak, who are experienced and have been on ISS before, things have changed. It's been years since their mission, so there's different hardware on board, different systems. Some things are running a little bit differently, so really important time. The other component of 2 from that 2+2 is 1 arrival day and then 1 departure day. But we will be extremely happy to have Sunny and Butch back down here on Earth. They've been up there for longer than expected, but they were up there in space doing their mission, doing what we do as astronauts, the moment we all wait for as astronauts. So they've had a very productive mission. I love that we saw that image of Sunny running on the treadmill. We talked about how she ran a marathon in her previous missions. I'm not sure if she did it again on this one or not, but I'll have to ask her about that. It'll be great to have them get back, and they are coming back with another one of my 8-ball classmates, Nick Hague. So.
Indeed. And a lot has been made about the return of Sunny and Butch, as we know, in the media and the reporting that's been happening about that. What's your sense of it inside the astronaut office that so much attention has been given to their return?
Yeah, definitely a lot of attention. But as I was saying, they are up there doing what astronauts are supposed to do. That is what we live for, and that's really our main intent of being astronauts, is to go to space and to do science and to do maintenance and do all the work that you do on the International Space Station. So it's really no big deal that Butch and Sunny are up there, again, longer than expected, but they're contributing to all the science and all the maintenance on board, just like every other crew member. And it's just something as astronauts that we know we always have to be ready for. We always have to be flexible. You know that there's a plan for your mission. That plan can always change. As you've seen in recent years, there are so many different things that can happen, not just with vehicles, but all different aspects of the space station program. And so, we accept the mission, knowing what the plan is, but knowing full well that there's a very good chance that it can change. And that's just something that, a lot of us are used to from our previous careers as well, that flexibility and adaptability. And I think it's one of our most important skills as an astronaut. And that's what Sunny and Butch have been doing.
You're absolutely right. They went up on a test flight that was supposed to last 8 days, but they were ready to become part of the team up at the International Space Station, working, maintaining. They did spacewalks. They have done it all. Yeah, they're
both very experienced astronauts. They've done International Space Station missions before, so it's not something foreign to them, and they were incredibly productive during their time.
All right, quick social question. We want to get another one up. We had a question come in from Swamp Smoke, who asks, what's one thing about living in space that no amount of training on Earth can fully prepare you for?
Yeah, that one, we get asked that one quite a lot. What I usually answer, I think, is true. We have so much extensive training that we've talked about today. We know all of these things. We have all this muscle memory for the spacesuit and all the things that we do up there. But what nothing can train you for is how it feels to live and work in microgravity all the time. Just the simple things, like the fact that you can't put your drink down on the table. You can't put your pen down. We've got Velcro on everything. And it's this really, if you see the photos and video of the International Space Station, there's stuff everywhere, on all the walls, on the ceiling, on the floor, cables everywhere. So if you take your drink bag and you Velcro it to a wall because you're up on the ceiling working for one moment, and then you go to a different location, you're on the floor or one of the walls, suddenly you're like, wait a minute, where did I put that drink bag? Because everything blends in this three-dimensional space, and your brain just isn't used to that. Here on Earth, look at us right now. Everything that we're using or looking at is really right down on this desk. We just put everything down, it stays there. We are not using any of this three-dimensional space above our heads or behind us or on the walls. And in space, you utilize all of that. And so it takes your brain some time to really adapt to that, to understand. You lose things a lot in the beginning because you put your drink bag down, you don't know where it went because you've been in all these different orientations and positions, and it's really hard to make those connections on spatial awareness. So I think that's the thing that's really difficult. Nothing can train you for it. You can talk to other astronauts and they can give you tips for dealing with some of these things, but until you experience it yourself, you really can't prepare for it.
I lose a lot of stuff on the ground. I can only imagine what I would lose in space. Thank goodness that my wife helps me track it down, along with these little Bluetooth reminders of where my keys and my wallet are. All right, T-minus 1 hour and 26 minutes and counting. Crew-10 getting ready for their mission to the International Space Station, and there you see them from left to right. We have Roscosmos cosmonaut, mission specialist, Kirill Peskov. To his left, our right, the pilot, Nicole Ayers. To her left, going to the right, is the commander, Anne McLean. And then to the far right on the screen, mission specialist and JAXA astronaut, Takuya Onishi. Up next, we'll be looking for the Launch Escape System health check. It's been a beautiful day so far here on the Space Coast ahead of liftoff. Currently at 7:03 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time and 48 seconds. For those who like to know the detail. Our journey today began at astronaut crew quarters at T-minus 4 hours when the astronauts began suiting up after a good weather brief, some breakfast, and health checks. They got into their vehicles and traveled out to the pad. It took about 20 minutes. They ascended the launch tower and then crossed that crew access arm that you see on the right-hand side of the screen. That took them into the white room at the very end of the arm, and they ingressed into the spacecraft where they are now. Got less than 90 minutes until liftoff. They performed this routine exactly as they did today on Wednesday during the first launch attempt. We got down to T-minus 43 minutes until we had an issue with some ground equipment and the hydraulics, where there was a trapped pocket of air inside the system. That was fixed and bled out on Thursday, and now the ground support equipment is good to go. The launch vehicle is go, and so is the spacecraft. More recently, the umbilicals, you can see those attached. They're across the back of the rocket, actually, and into the transporter erector. They provided some comm checks through those. We did some suit leak checks for the astronauts inside the capsule. We also did some comm checks, completed those. And the closeout team closed and sealed the hatch right after they got a leak check of its own inside the capsule to make sure that nothing would leak out. There you see it there. And that side leak hatch check is good. Side hatch leak check, rather. Also a final check for FOD, which is foreign object debris. The closeout team carefully examined the area around the seal. with a side hatch. And they have since left. They cleared out of the blast danger area. And now the only 4 people who remain inside the perimeter of Launch Complex 39A are right there on your screen. The crew for CREW-10. This Dragon Endurance spacecraft is a special one for NASA. It's also special to Jessica, as you noted so well, talking about the name of Endurance, a historic ship that helped Shackleton cross the Antarctic. The Dragon spacecraft Endurance will take CREW-10 to space today in its 4th space flight. Since its first flight in 2021 for Crew-3, SpaceX's Endurance Dragon has been a workhorse for NASA's Commercial Crew program, flying mission after mission, and has safely carried astronauts to the International Space Station. With Crew-7, Endurance proved its reliability yet again, marking its 3rd journey to orbit. In all, Endurance has flown 10 astronauts and 2 cosmonauts to and from the International Space Station. It supported international crews from NASA, ESA, JAXA, and Roscosmos. Live coverage of NASA and SpaceX's Crew-10 launch to the International Space Station. We are T-minus 1 hour and 17 minutes and counting until liftoff of Crew-10 on a Falcon 9 rocket to the International Space Station. Crew-10 will be the latest crew to fly as part of NASA's Commercial Crew Program, which uses private companies to transport people to and from the orbiting lab from right here on U.S. soil. We've had a great countdown so far. What a beautiful shot. The Indian River Lagoon in the foreground. In the background, the Falcon 9 rocket and Endurance spacecraft with Crew-10 on board. Weather is 95% go. The only tiny concern is the formation of cumulus clouds, but as you can see from this view, we don't have many of those around here, and that's a good thing. Excitement is starting to pick up as we get closer and closer to liftoff, and Jessica, it's been a good day so far.
Yeah, absolutely. The weather looks perfect, and much to Vapor and other Air Force jet pilots' delight, no need for umbrellas today.
That's right.
Crew getting comfortable, getting closer and closer. They're getting excited. You know, Daryl, it's been 5 years since the Demo 2 mission, which was the first crewed mission of SpaceX, and that was an interesting time. That was actually just after I left the ISS. I left in April of 2020, and Demo 2 occurred in May, and since then, we've had 11 crewed flights. This will be the 11th crewed flight, so this will be the 10th rotational flight for crew members after that Demo 2 flight. So pretty impressive that all of that has happened in that 5-year period. And another fun fact, the Demo 1 mission, which was of course the mission without a crew for that very first test of the Dragon and docking to the space station, that was when Anne McClain was on board for her first mission in 2019. So she played a very crucial role of getting in Dragon and doing all of those checkouts after that vehicle had docked to the space station. So pretty cool full circle story here of Anne being up there for that first uncrewed mission, and now in Crew-10, the 11th crewed mission in the last 5 years. So pretty impressive.
How about that? She saw the first Dragon come up, and now she's on board the 11th. And for you too, right there at the beginning, we're on our 10th operational mission, as you mentioned, and now when you look back, you think about just being right there at the beginning of the Commercial Crew Program when that Dragon docked at the ISS. It was really exciting for the entire country was so thrilled to have the ability to fly to space from American soil again.
Yeah, it was really wonderful to resume that aptitude to send rockets and with crew members on board from American soil again from here in Florida, and of course still trading off regularly with our Russian counterparts with Soyuz flights. So we're still continuing to fly American astronauts on the Soyuz, and as you see, we have a Russian cosmonaut on the Dragon today. So really nice that we maintain this spirit of international cooperation on board the International Space Station. Especially, as we said, with that 50th anniversary of Apollo-Soyuz coming up in July. Another spectacular view. I think it's going to be a very beautiful launch day for all the people on the ground here in Florida.
Absolutely, we are headed in that direction. And hopefully so with the weather, because the weather gets a little iffy once we get into the weekend. So this is a prime opportunity to go.
Just like that prime number 73 for Expedition 73.
That's right. Let's grab another quick social question, Jessica. We're with Jessica Meir, NASA astronaut. Mohammed Derek asks, apologies if I didn't get your name correctly, What lessons from the CREW-10 mission will influence future astronaut rescue and contingency planning for the ISS and beyond?
You know, I think for that one, there isn't really
And this is Launch
something...
Control on countdown. For crew awareness, we'll be commencing with fuel bleed in approximately 2 minutes. Expect some pressing and venting from the vehicle.
And we can see the venting and that fuel bleed that's happening right now as it comes off the transporter erector. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so we talked a little bit earlier about how whatever vehicle you launch on, that vehicle remains docked to the International Space Station as your lifeboat, essentially as your rescue vehicle. Even though you launch and you're not going to land for 6 months or more, you have that vehicle there at all times in case anything happens on the space station, anything happens to a crew member, though we needed to get the crew home safely. So we always have that rescue capability. From time to time, as you've seen in the last few years, we do have various situations emerge, if there's a technical issue on a certain vehicle, for example. And so we do what we do best here at NASA, and that is adapt and reevaluate and replan. And to me, that has always been the most impressive thing of working at NASA. When I am most impressed about NASA, it's when we have these challenges, because you see NASA rise to the occasion and do what we do best: readapt, be flexible. And that's the same thing for all of these rescue missions. You know, we will replan and do whatever we need to do.
Good afternoon. You're watching live launch coverage of NASA and SpaceX's 10th rotational flight to the International Space Station. I'm NASA's Daryl Nail, and with us again today is NASA astronaut Jessica Meir. It's great to have you back again.
Thanks, Daryl. It is wonderful to be here. Sending your friends and colleagues up to space is always the best thing that you can do as an astronaut here on the ground. So I'm so excited to be here playing a role in all of it.
And a big reason that you're here, to see your good friend Ann McClain off to space. Liftoff for her and the rest of the crew is at 7:03 p.m. Eastern Time from here at Launchpad 39A. But before we continue our coverage, a quick reminder about Jessica's experience in space. Take a look back to 2019. Jessica Meir and Christina Cook made history with the first all-women spacewalk, the 221st for space station assembly. 2 years later, Jessica served as astronaut support person for CREW-10, or CREW-2 rather. There you see her, number 38, helping the team all the way to the pad. Then she went over to pad 39B, where she rehearsed with the Artemis II crew. A great time with the astronauts was had, but this time this crew was practicing to go to the moon.
You know, I really like this video because it shows the enthusiasm that we all bring to the roles, whether it's a support role or whether it's a crew itself. You know, there is nothing better than sending your friends off to space, as I just said. So one of the most interesting things about our job as astronauts is doing different things all the time. It is an incredible time to be an astronaut right now, where we have so many different vehicles we can launch on. The Soyuz, like I launched on, the SpaceX Dragon that you're watching here today. Soon, hopefully, coming up next year, the Artemis II vehicle will launch and send our first astronauts to an orbit around the moon. So it's a very exciting time for us.
We certainly have a lot to look forward here on the Space Coast and for the United States space program. Some background, though, on today's launch attempt. It is the second launch attempt for CREW-10. On Wednesday, NASA and SpaceX stood down from the first attempt after teams discovered a suspected pocket of air trapped in the ground support hydraulic system used for the clamp arm that you can see there on your screen. It is wrapped around the Falcon 9 rocket and holds it to the launch arm. Yesterday, ground support teams successfully flushed that hydraulic system, and now it is ready to go for today's launch. The crew had a little bit of break while they worked on that.
Yeah, they did. The crew was able to relax yesterday. I think it was a very fortuitous opportunity because, the day before you launch, they're still probably doing all of these things that are giving them a little bit of stress, dealing with last-minute issues. And then yesterday, they had already done all those things for the previous launch. So they had yesterday to really relax and had just a chance to be outside at the beach house and just take it all in, appreciate some of the sights and sounds and feels of the Earth before they go to their new home on the ISS.
CREW-10 will be launching from pad 39A that you see there. Big props to our flight operations crew right here at the Kennedy Space Center for those beautiful views. You see the helicopter on the left part of your screen orbiting around the pad, going in circles, and appropriately so, here on Pi Day. What's the crew? Sorry?
I'm sure making Anne McLean feel right at home too, the sweet sounds of the helicopter in the distance.
Absolutely. A helicopter pilot herself, and all of them pilots inside the capsule today. In a little over an hour, this spacecraft and rocket will lift off. So let's take you through the rest of their launch day previously leading up to this moment. After waking up and having a bite to eat, SpaceX helped CREW-10 into their suits, as you can see here inside the historic crew quarters suit-up room. They also played a card game, a tradition to use to get their bad luck out of there, losing for the commander and the chief winning. Then we saw them walk out, CREW-10 waving, taking the same footsteps as every NASA astronaut since Apollo 7 in 1968, walking out, greeting the crowd, getting into their vehicles, and then joining a security escorted caravan for a 20-minute ride to launch pad 39A. And then there they are, looking up and looking out as they walk down the crew access arm into their spacecraft on top of the rocket, and now they are locked and loaded inside the spacecraft. And we are watching them live while they await the next big milestones, the fueling of the Falcon 9 rocket and the arming of the launch escape system. Throughout this broadcast, we've been taking your questions from social media, so keep sending them. Hashtag AskNASA on NASA's YouTube, Facebook, X, and Twitch platforms. Also, for those of you watching on NASA's YouTube channel right now, a reminder to make sure you refresh your player or browser to join our live chat. Now at this time, we are expanding our coverage and would like to welcome SpaceX and NASA commentators joining us live from Hawthorne, California, where the SpaceX mission team is located. And a great good afternoon and welcome to both of you.
Thanks, Daryl. I'm Jessie Anderson, a Senior Production Engineering Manager here at SpaceX.
And I'm Anna Schneider with NASA Communications. We are excited to be joining you once again from Mission Control here in Hawthorne as we count down to liftoff of CREW-10 just over an hour from now. Of course, CREW-10 is our 10th operational mission with SpaceX, flying astronauts for long-duration missions to the International Space Station. CREW-10 will have 2 first-time flyers on board, as well as a veteran NASA astronaut and a veteran Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, or JAXA astronaut. And the multinational crew represents 3 different space agencies, with NASA, JAXA, and Roscosmos all represented.
Today's crew will fly aboard the Dragon spacecraft named Endurance, which previously flew the CREW-3, CREW-5, and CREW-7 missions. Overall, this will be Dragon's 46th visit to the space station and its 14th human spaceflight mission to the orbiting lab, which includes NASA's Commercial Crew Program missions and private astronaut missions with Axiom Space. We are also celebrating the 23rd anniversary of the founding of SpaceX today on March 14th, which also is Pi Day, a celebration of the mathematical constant pi.
Now, over the last 3+ hours, CREW-10 has been going through the detailed process of getting ready for their mission to the International Space Station. So let's go ahead and take a moment to introduce you to the crew. In the commander's seat is NASA astronaut Anne McLean. She's making her second trip to low Earth orbit. The Spokane, Washington native and U.S. Army colonel was selected by NASA as an astronaut in 2013 and has spent a total of 204 days in space, completing 2 spacewalks totaling 13 hours and 8 minutes outside of the orbiting laboratory. Next to McLean in the pilot seat is Nicole Ayers, who was selected as a NASA astronaut in 2021. The Colorado native graduated from the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs and is a major in the U.S. Air Force, and this will be the first spaceflight for Ayers. Serving as a mission specialist is JAXA astronaut Takuya Onishi, and today's flight will mark Onishi's second trip to the space station. He was selected as an astronaut by JAXA in 2009 and has logged 113 days in space previously. The final mission specialist is Roscosmos cosmonaut Kirill Peskov, and he was selected as a cosmonaut in 2018 and will also be making his first spaceflight today. Once on board the International Space Station, CREW-10 will briefly become members of Expedition 72 and then Expedition 73 in April. They will conduct space station maintenance and scientific research to understand material flammability, contributing to future spacecraft design and study how spaceflight affects human physiology and psychology. The crew will also engage with students worldwide via ham radio and use its existing hardware with newly integrated software to test a backup lunar navigation solution.
To date, SpaceX has flown 56 crew members to space since the Demo 2 mission in May of 2020, which was almost 5 years ago. Coming up here at T-minus 45 minutes, we'll be listening in for the team to report their readiness for propellant load with a final go-no-go poll. And so far, today continues to be a smooth countdown, and we're looking good for an on-time liftoff at 7:03 p.m. Eastern Time from Launch Complex 39A in Florida. Now here on the ground, the teams will be staffed around the clock in mission control just behind us to monitor Dragon and the mission, and not just for today, but throughout the entire mission, from liftoff to the CREW-10's arrival at the space station, all the way through splashdown when the astronauts return back home. And on console or headset in mission control, which you can see there on your screen, there are 6 key positions. The mission director is in charge of the room and tasked with making real-time decisions to ensure mission success. The person that you may hear talking to the astronauts is the Crew Operations and Resources Engineer. You'll hear us refer to them as the core throughout the broadcast. And there are 4 additional team members focused on vehicle systems, including avionics, navigation and control, software, propulsion, life support, and communication with ground support teams. Now, apart from mission control, our Falcon 9 team...
Dragon SpaceX, cycling orbit tank isolation valves to equalize low flow pressure. Additionally, I can give you a go to step into Section 5. When ready, report go for launch.
SpaceX Dragon, copy Section 5 and work.
Just pausing for some comms between the core and CREW-10. Now, apart from mission control, our Falcon 9 team is currently located in the Launch and Landing Control Center at Hangar X. And we are now less than an hour until launch, and they are settling in for final checkouts, propellant loading, and getting ready for launch itself.
Yep, and NASA has its very own set of team members at NASA's Mission Control Center in Houston, Texas, who have been preparing the International Space Station for Dragon's arrival. The teams in Mission Control Houston recently gave their go for launch, confirming that the station is ready to receive Dragon and the new crew. Following liftoff, today's flight to the space station will take about 28 hours, with Dragon flying autonomously the entire way. Docking is targeted for 11:30 p.m. Eastern, 8:30 p.m. Pacific, tomorrow, March 15th. And just like autopilot on a commercial aircraft, the crew always has the ability to take manual control of the spacecraft if needed.
And before all of that happens, as the booster returns to the launch site and slows down from supersonic speeds, people in the immediate area may hear a brief double clap of a thunder-like sound known as a sonic boom.
Similar sonic booms like this were heard during the return and landing of the space shuttle, and sonic booms like these are one of the hallmarks of reusable systems like Falcon.
Here's what some of these booster returns have looked and sounded like on previous missions.
I know a lot of people will be excited when they hear the sonic boom.
And these are going to provide quite a show, because you're going to hear those sonic booms.
That sonic boom is great for us.
Broke the sound barrier.
Type booster separation confirmed.
Start with 2 sonic booms here in the room.
Booster landing confirmed.
We are now at T-minus 57 minutes and counting to today's launch. While we wait, let's check in with NASA's Gary Jordan at Johnson Space Center to see how things are shaping up at Mission Control in Houston. Gary, how's it going?
Hey Jesse, hey Anna, thanks for having me. Welcome again to Mission Control here in the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. We're the hub of human spaceflight at NASA, and the team here is poised for launch and preparing for the crew to lift off and begin their journey to the orbiting laboratory. In the home stretch of rendezvous, NASA and SpaceX flight controllers will enter into what's called integrated operations. Both flight control teams will conduct a series of go, no-go polls for Dragon Endurance's docking to the International Space Station. Rotation missions like CREW-10 help NASA continue to maximize the important research and technology demonstrations made possible only in the International Space Station's unique microgravity environment. The space station is critical for NASA to prepare for future commercial low Earth orbit destinations and to understand and overcome the challenges of long-duration spaceflight necessary for a long-term presence on the Moon and crewed missions deeper into the solar system, including Mars. Now here's a closer look at the mission and what CREW-10 will have to look forward to during their stay aboard the International Space Station.
The CREW-10 mission is going to be a rotational mission to the International Space Station.
So we will launch aboard the SpaceX Dragon capsule and the Falcon 9 rocket.
I'm just enjoying the way towards the launch. Of course, I'm looking forward for the day of launch.
And we are going to stay there about a half a year.
So the first goal of CREW-10 is to continue learning about the Dragon and the Falcon 9 rocket that we're going to be flying on to enable SpaceX to continue their development of rockets and even private astronaut missions in the future. The other mission is to get us safely to the International Space Station so that we can crew this incredible national orbiting laboratory that we have and continue the science experiments that we have ongoing there.
One of the unique characteristics of the International Space Station is microgravity.
We get to learn how humans and plants and other types of hardware react in the space environment and the microgravity environment.
And it helps us to develop all kinds of new materials, medicines, and it helps us to push our knowledge forward.
The discoveries that we make on board the International Space Station then inform what we do on Earth, and it allows us to further both humankind here on Earth and get to further places in the universe.
So I've often been asked why we explore, and I think it's different for everybody.
When people are born, they naturally want to explore their environment, first as babies, and then as kids, and finally as adults. That's how we expand our world, and that's how we find something new.
Every time that we make a further step, we learn something and we learn how to adapt, and that is so important to humanity.
This is probably the main things which drives us forward and helps us to survive as a species.
There are so many unknowns in space, and as explorers and as humans, we want to find out what's in that unknown. For me, it's the fact that I get to be a small piece of figuring out what the unknown is and taking that next step to get to the Moon and to Mars and the Artemis program.
Our ultimate goal is to go to Mars, but it's not an easy journey, and when we face a new challenge, we must solve it step by step.
I think that's one of the biggest benefits of the International Space Station. We're outside of the atmosphere, and now we don't have the protection of the atmosphere. What happens, and how do we better prepare our people, our hardware, our food, our water systems for that deep space exploration? It's really important on the space station that we learn those lessons now when we're in low Earth orbit. That way we know what we need to bring with us when we go onto the Moon with the Artemis program.
One of the things that we do on the International Space Station is work with our international partners all across the world.
I think it's hard to overestimate the value of international cooperation in space exploration because we all know that it takes much time and effort.
Space is hard, it's very challenging, it's sometimes unpredictable, and that's why I think cooperation is the key to success.
The International Space Station wouldn't be international without all of our partners.
And our goal is to be a beacon of hope for all of humankind so that people can look and say, this is what we can accomplish when we work together.
T-minus 52 minutes and counting. We just pulled go for NASA and SpaceX to begin propellant load at T-minus 35 minutes. A great update there to our milestones. We now have NASA's Megan Cruz live from a nearby launch viewing location here at Kennedy Space Center. Megan.
Hey, yeah, back here again today, and the weather is as beautiful as it was Wednesday, and the crowd as excited as ever to see liftoff in less than an hour. Now, we again want to bring in Mike Ravenscroft with NASA's Commercial Crew program. He's on console working the launch today over at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Mike, great to have you back.
Hi, Megan. Happy to be here.
All right, so again, thanks for stepping off console. When we spoke during Wednesday's launch attempt, there was a ground hydraulics issue. What was done to resolve that to get us to launch today?
Yeah, Megan. So the team worked really hard on Wednesday during that first attempt to resolve the issue. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get there. So the teams, the SpaceX and NASA team, met Wednesday evening, Wednesday night, and developed a troubleshooting plan to go ahead and restore this system back to operational. So we went ahead and met, and Thursday they went off and executed that plan. They went ahead and opened up some of the valves, did some inspections, opened up some of the valves, and went ahead and bled the system. And then they did perform checkouts, and performed the checkouts, and the system was nominal at that point. So we got back here today on launch countdown, and did some additional checkouts, normal checkouts that are performed on day of launch, and everything's checking out good.
That's wonderful to hear, and it's always great to see teams coming together to resolve issues to get us to launch. Now, as CCP's Launch Vehicle Systems Office Manager, you were also part of keeping an eye on today's booster, correct? Which is flying for its second time.
Yeah, Megan. So we watched that booster from the beginning when it's starting to be built, the whole way through production, the whole way through all the testing that's performed, even before it's getting that first launch, which occurred in December for the Empower E mission. So we track all that, track all the issues that come out from all that in the first flight, and we review all that data. And then when it goes into maintenance for our flight, we are tracking all that work along with SpaceX and ensuring that the vehicle is ready for day of launch and a safe flight for the crew to the ISS.
And Mike, last question for you. How do you feel just being a part of NASA's Commercial Crew program?
This is awesome. I can't imagine myself anywhere else. This program, I've been here for quite a while, and this is a family. You get to work with folks from all over the country, from California to Texas to Alabama to here in Florida, and it's just a family, and that's how we feel about each other. We work hard. We get to work with a lot of great contractors, and so day in and day out, you get to show up for work and enjoy what you do.
Yeah, and do amazing things together. Mike, thank you so much. We appreciate your time.
Thanks, Megan. Appreciate it.
All right, let's get back over now to Anna and Jesse and Hawthorne.
Thanks, Megan. Falcon 9 is the first orbital class rocket capable of reflight. Together, Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy have completed more than 450 launches and over 380 reflights.
And today, the booster will be attempting to land at Landing Zone 1, which is just down the coast from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. This will be the second flight of the first stage booster supporting the CREW-10 mission.
Rapid reusability drastically reduces launch costs, helps increase launch frequency, and enables a wide array of new government, commercial, and scientific opportunities in space. Lowering the cost of access to space is helping take humanity's next steps into the solar system, whether in low Earth orbit, interplanetary, or even deep space. And when costs are lower, government and commercial customers can launch more missions, which helps accelerate development. This also helps commercial satellite and private research customers afford to launch more projects to space, which helps stimulate innovation here on Earth. All of this to say, reusability is the key innovation that is making space more accessible for the industry as a whole. And just like the first stage of Falcon 9, Dragon is also reusable.
The reusable Dragon spacecraft has flown people to the International Space Station 13 times, and as we mentioned earlier, today's crew will fly aboard the same Dragon that previously flew the CREW-3, CREW-5, and CREW-7 missions.
But back to today's mission. We are coming up on T-minus 48 minutes to launch, and our teams are carefully moving through the pre-flight process. Now, a lot of preparations have brought us to this point, including a dry dress rehearsal, static fire on Sunday, and an initial launch attempt on Wednesday. Now, we did stand down from that attempt due to a hydraulic system issue, but the teams completed inspections of the ground support hydraulic system used for the clamp arm supporting the Falcon 9 rocket and successfully flushed a suspected pocket of trapped air in the system.
Now, all of that hard work brings us to today's launch, and next up in our
The team has pulled go for LES arm, propellant load, and launch.
And there, you just heard that the team had pulled go for both prop load and for launch. So that was the next step in the countdown that we were waiting for, and that was from the SpaceX launch director, and they were calling up to the crew to let them know that we had received that go to continue with that prop load. And then, as we mentioned earlier, the Dragon launch team, as well as key NASA launch members, are in the Launch and Landing Control Center at SpaceX's Hangar X in Florida. And the launch director will also check in with the Dragon mission director, referred to as the MD, and the NASA launch manager to make sure everyone is on the same page and everyone is ready to move forward. Again, there's a lot of teams and a lot of moving parts to getting a launch off the ground. And so leading up to the final stages of launch today, you will hear various check-ins on that process. So right now, there on your screen, you can see CREW-10. They are on board Dragon, waiting to get the green light to stow the crew arm for the launch and arm the launch escape system. And we did just hear that go, so we should start getting a good view of that access arm moving away from the spacecraft pretty soon. Now, on the range side of things, the range continues to be go for launch, monitoring the clearance area surrounding our launch pad, as well as the air and sea space along the flight corridor.
And as you can see in your on the left-hand corner of your screen, the weather is looking great for today's launch. Overall, weather is trending in the right direction, and we currently have less than a 5% chance of violation at our target liftoff time today, which is great. Our teams will continue to keep an eye on the weather, but we'll have a final pre-fueling weather briefing in about 20 seconds from now at the T-minus 45-minute mark. Now, weather is forecasted to be excellent on the Space Coast heading into today's launch opportunity. And again, the current forecast is greater than 95% chance of acceptable conditions at launch. Now, weather along the Atlantic
T-minus
coast...
45 minutes. Both control rooms go into lockdown and remain in that state until the launch escape system is disarmed. All operators are to remain at their console and maintain a sterile cockpit until MD confirms successful disarming of the launch escape system, following orbit insertion or propellant offload in the event of a scrub. For non-urgent no-go conditions, brief the CE or LD and then approve boarding the countdown. For urgent issues affecting the safety of the operation, operators shall call hold, hold, hold on the countdown net. Launch control will abort the launch auto sequence immediately and proceed in the launch abort auto sequence. At T-minus 10 seconds, launch control will be hands-off, relying on the automated abort criteria for the remainder of the count. Operators advise the launch director whether structural breakup or fire is imminent or occurring per Dragon manual escape flight rules. Launch control, you may proceed with arming the crew arm for movement. Crew exit arm retraction starting.
And that was the launch director performing a briefing with the crew. Sounds like everything is go for launch, and we're going to start seeing that crew access arm moving away from the vehicle here shortly.
We should also see propellant load getting underway in just a few minutes as well. Again, our teams are staffed around the clock in Mission Control here in Hawthorne, Mission Control in Houston, as well as the Launch Control Center to monitor Dragon throughout its entire mission from liftoff all the way to CREW-10's arrival at the space station and then on its return home to Earth. And there you're seeing some great shots of the crew access arm pulling away from Dragon. Clear skies as far as the eye can see. Perfect weather for today's launch.
Getting exciting over here. Yeah, weather looks amazing over there at pad 39A. You can see that crew access arm still moving. It'll move all the way to that 90 degrees away from the vehicle.
Crew access arm retraction complete.
And there we just heard confirmation that the crew access arm has been fully retracted. That process is now complete. Again, the next step in our process leading up to today's launch at 7:03 p.m. Eastern, 4:03 p.m. Pacific will be the propellant loading, and that should be getting underway here shortly. In the meantime, let's go ahead and check back in with Daryl at NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida.
All right, thank you very much, ladies. Back here with NASA astronaut Jessica Meir as we orbit the launch pad, Launch Complex 39A here at the Kennedy Space Center, going in circles on Pi Day. Seems fitting, Jessica.
Absolutely, it does. This is the day for it.
We've got a few milestones coming up here in the next few minutes. We're going to close our visors at T-minus 39 minutes and then start the process of getting that launch escape system armed. As we just saw, the crew access arm has moved away, so if there were to be an emergency, going through the crew access arm is one option up until the point in which the launch escape system is armed, and then it's off the top of the rocket.
Yeah, that's right. That launch escape arm could actually swing back in just about 30 seconds, and during that time, the crew would actually be unbuckling their seat belts and getting ready to egress, so that timing would work out.
Closed, arming the launch escape system.
Copy, Dragon. You are